Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. On yesterday's satellite imagery, we're watching lots of moisture come northeastward here with the low pressure both at the surface and aloft edging its way eastward out over the Bering Sea. And first band coming up, not too bad over the interior and the southeast coast, pretty well as good. You can see some breaks that as these clouds left, some clearing came in late in the day, and then this today has all changed and rain moving into the southeast coast there. About 1/1600ths of an inch at Sitka in the last 24 hours, while Juneau only picking up 500ths, but a half inch falling in Yakutat, and this band coming northward, actually two bands. This is the one that came through earlier. And then this one right through here, that actually the front itself right in this area, and that brought about a half inch of rain to Homer and a little bit less in Kenai today. Some breaks back behind the showers over the Bristol Bay area and some thunderstorms here that developed over Kodiak Island this morning. Took off mostly to the northeast and were right there over the northwest or western Gulf of Alaska this afternoon. That's associated with the heavier band of showers that's now up over the Cook Inlet area. So a fair amount of sunshine from the Seward Peninsula across the northern interior, and then clouds lingering up there, basically high pressure at the surface, but westerly winds aloft, keeping it kind of cloudy and cool up in that area with a little bit of moisture, but nothing heavy at all. And this is the remnants of a front there, and then some showers already moving over into the Mackenzie River Delta. A lot of showers here, but the rain tapering off over the Pribilof Islands. 0.8200ths of an inch falling in St. Paul in the last 24 hours. Pretty wet weekend there, and some gusty winds as well. Became a little brisk. You can see the gradient here. 25 to 35 miles an hour in gusts. That moving into the Unalaska area, actually behind this trough axis, and extending back into the western and central, or actually the central Aleutians. But those winds should be coming down as this area of high pressure shifts eastward ahead of this next system farther out to the west. And then some warm front rain spreading into the southeast coast during the day today. A lot of clouds there, and then just some showers up along the Alaska Range to the north. But the heavier band of rain down to the south, especially along the front here as it pushes northward. But it's not going to make a big push to the north. Most of the jet stream is going to carry all that off to the east and northeast into the Panhandle. And for tonight, you can see this edges up into the Sitna Valley here and then cuts back somewhere over the Kuskokwim Valley. Main low pressure now over the Yukon, mid-Yukon River Delta areas. And the wind's diminishing back here and also beginning to dry out. Still some showers back over the Bering Sea areas, and still kind of breezy tonight for the Pribilof Islands, as well as the eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula should start picking up a little more wind. Not so much wet evening here overnight period for Kodiak Island, and forecast for the North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle, rain periods of tonight with fog. Winds coming up to small craft advisory levels in some areas here. That's about 25 knots along the southeast coast this evening, and then that'll tend to drop back later on. And then isolated thunderstorms possible here over the mountainous terrain of the interior, Alaska Range, maybe the Talkeetnas, and possibly along this trough up farther to the north, but staying fair and dry over the Yukon Valley, all the way back across the Koyukuk to the Kobuk, and not too bad there over Kotzebue Sound in the northwest coast. The Arctic coast, high pressure, keeping winds on the light side there, and areas of fog and low clouds, mainly east side along the coast. And this next system pushing some moisture eastward to possibly AKwx toward morning, but just stay mostly to the west on out there towards Shimia. And winds not too much of a problem, mostly staying south of the range with this system, or south of the chain, the Aleutian chain with that system. And it low pressure pushing some rain now in across the AKwx and Inatka area tomorrow with not much in the way of winds. Again, they'll be west-southwesterly just to the south of the area there, lighter and more variable up over the southern Bering Sea. Meanwhile, we've got another system coming out of the Russian Far East, may spread some moisture to the St. Lawrence Island area late tomorrow, but now the front pushing across the southeast coast there, and then this front, cold front associated, or actually just in advance of the upper level trough axis back in this area here. Showers throughout much of the day, isolated thunderstorms again, lots of clouds over the south central interior, even up into the Tanana Valley. Good chance of some moisture and showers there. This main low back to the west, but to the north and northwest of that low, skies remain fair, mostly clear and sunny conditions, and not too bad up along the Arctic coast, just a variable low clouds and fog right along the coastline, but inland looking mostly sunny. And still a little breezy back here along the Alaska Peninsula, northwesterlies 20 to 30 miles an hour from the eastern Aleutians there up along the Alaska Peninsula, but nothing too serious at all. No gales out in any of the marine zones, just some small craft advisories. And taking a look at Tuesday, we'll see this system weakens and slides off to the east-southeast with a low center very close to Dutch Harbor and Unalaska there with probably some clouds and moisture, but nothing heavy at all. And then that front trails back along the Aleutians, the bigger system farther out to the west. Otherwise, higher pressure beginning to come inland now, and so the showers will be a little less continuous, a lot more scattered, and look for some clearing, possible areas of sunshine, but in the afternoon, still unstable enough with a couple of troughs coming through to trip off some showers. Isolated thunderstorms possible there up over the eastern interior areas down to about the Alaska Range. Otherwise, just a few scattered showers in the afternoon over the Kenai Peninsula and the Talkeetnas, possibly even the Wrangell Mountains as well. A little more numerous here along this trough, along the Alaska Range, and then back up to the northwest. And that front now all the way down into our Dixon entrance, so the rain leaving the area, just a few scattered showers with clearing back along the southeast coast, so drying out a little bit there and staying nice up over the Brooks Range North Slope areas and even the Arctic coast. Temperatures this afternoon, mid-50s over the Pribilofs, 57 note on Alaska, as well as Sand Point, Cold Bay, 56 degrees. A couple of 60s here, both at Chignik and Pilot Point, 63 degrees, 60 King Salmon with a 58 at Cape Newenham. Kodiak up to 62 degrees, lower to mid-50s for the remainder of the Aleutians. And coming up to the interior, up along the Arctic coast, temperatures in the mid to upper 30s up in that area, 35 at Barrow, one of the cooler locations, 61 there at Kotzebue, 62 at Buckland. Shishmaref had 54, 40 degrees at Point Lay, and 73 at Fairbanks, and I believe the warm spot was at Fort Wainwright with 74 this afternoon, 62 at Delta, same thing at Eagle, 65 up there in the Koyukuk Valley at Bettles with McGrath, 62, Talkeetna, 56, 51 at Gulkana, 57 in Anchorage, and Cordova. Over at Yakutat, 54 degrees there, 58 in Homer, and the southeast coast mostly in the mid to upper 50s. And for tonight's lows, lower to mid 30s here along the Arctic coast and actually in right up to the Brooks Range with milder 40s to lower 50s here all the way back to the Bering Sea coastline. Lower 50s for the southern Bering Sea, Pribilofs and the Aleutians, mid 50s for the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow in the lower 60s here for the southeast coastal areas up in toward the Cup River Basin, and a range from 55 to 62 or so here for the south central areas, more in the 60s, lower 60s here. As things dry out, a little more sunshine possible here over the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta areas, and mid to upper 50s for the Aleutians. And up along the Arctic coast, everyone should at least reach 40 degrees there, but mid 40s, 50s to mid to upper 60s there over the northwest valleys. And for flying weather tomorrow, the IFR on its way out and becoming marginal here along the southeast coast. You can see some VFR showing up just off the coast. IFR here along Prince William Sound and the Kenai Peninsula going marginal, then IFR up along the Alaska Range. That'll extend back down along the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula and probably include a good swath of northeast Bristol Bay at some point tomorrow. Eastern Arctic coast vulnerable to IFR at times, and then areas of marginal to IFR here over much of just about all of the southwest interior. You can see that slides right up into the Tanana Valley there, and possibly even as far east as Eagle. Lots of IFR out here over the Bering Sea that extends all the way back over the western Aleutians. Passes Anaktuvuk. Look for VFR conditions tomorrow. Stays nice up to the north there, so both Anaktuvuk and Atigun will see good VFR. Sealing's visibility is unlimited. Lake Clark and Merrill, though, in fact, all of the western Alaska Range will see occasional IFR. In fact, probably lowest conditions will develop now in the western entrances of all three passes, including rainy. IFR tomorrow. Windy, marginal VFR becoming IFR probably by midday, and then it'll be occasionally IFR for thereafter through the afternoon. Isabel will go for marginal conditions. Bentasta, VFR, possibly seen marginal VFR on the southern entrance, but VFR to the north. And for Tanita, marginal VFR. Portage looks pretty good for IFR tomorrow throughout much of the day into the evening, and Chilkoot and White, IFR to start with and then gradually improving to marginal VFR, and any luck could become VFR late in the afternoon or into the evening more likely. Freezing levels showing 6,000 feet right up along the Arctic coast there, and then 8,000 feet here with the front now, the jet stream rolling up like this, so you've got 10 to 12, 13, 14,000 feet there over the southern southeast coast, and about 8,000 feet back over the Aleutians, and the upper low here, cold pool, actually probably some 6,000 to 8,000 foot freezing levels, or 5,000 to 6,000 feet, I mean right in this area by tomorrow afternoon. And for the icing threats, areas of moderate rime or mixed icing here. So sit in the valley down in northern Cook Inlet and back to the west there along the Alaska Range, possibly up into the central Tanana Valley, drying out to the west. A little bit of icing possible, mostly above 8,000 feet though over the Aleutians, and this stuff moving out of the southeast coast, but freezing levels are high, so you have to get up to about 10,000 feet to see any of that. Freezing levels coming down, so this may see icing all the way down to 5,000 feet. For the winds aloft, here's the upper level low tomorrow coming eastward, now just about right over south central Alaska. Of course, the jet down to the south of the system takes a turn to the northeast, about 130 knots into the Panhandle. Another one here slipping out of the Russian Far East. That's going to drop into the Bering Sea, but this area higher pressure between the two, that's going to come eastward and begin to dry it out over the southwest coast first, and then that should begin to shut the moisture off and dry things out a little bit on Tuesday, possibly into Wednesday for the interior. 9,000 foot winds, low pressure roughly in this position at that level. Good south to north flow here up to 30 knots, turning southwest 20 to 30 knots into the Panhandle. Again, the whole pattern shifting eastward with time. Northwest winds 30 knots back along the Alaska Peninsula, so lighter winds coming into the western Aleutians, but this high really not that much, just really in advance of this low here, these southwesterly 45 knot winds almost up to the Aleutians. You can see here a long end just south and southwest, that's where the strongest winds are, more variable and lighter just on the north side across the southern Bering Sea. Northwesterlies 20 to 30 knots here, southwest coast down across the Alaska Peninsula, beginning to diminish over Kodiak Island. South to north only at about 15 to 20 knots, so into the North Gulf Coast areas. Variable back with the low center here, light winds just 5 to 10 knots up over the northern interior and the eastern interior, and only 10 to 15 here over the southeast coast at this level. So moving on to turbulence, some occasional mechanical here, mostly along the Alaska Peninsula, Aleutian Range areas with those northwest winds. And then all the heavy stuff will be out in the Gulf of Alaska or Western Gulf. Some of this light to isolated moderate turbulence could extend up into Prince William Sound, maybe Cordova, possibly over to Seward and then back down along the west side of Kodiak Island early, and then they'll probably move off the coast by the afternoon. Everywhere else pretty smooth from the Arctic coast, much of the Bering Sea and all of the Panhandle looking good turbulence-wise. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecast.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, joined again by Eric Stevens from the GINA, or Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thanks for joining us again, Eric.
Glad to be here.
Thanks. We are talking about satellites today, and what are satellites? And the easy way to talk about that would be to introduce our friend the globe here, which is a round spheroid type shape. We haven't been on a flat Earth as far as history is known for several hundred years now, and because of that we also know that we are orbiting around other objects in space, and that objects are orbiting around the Earth as well. We call all those things satellites in some form or fashion, right, Eric?
Right. Well, this leads to the discussion of Johannes Kepler's research 400 years ago. Did some of the early work and founded the 3 laws of planetary motion, which are important to planets and also to weather satellites.
Okay.
Kepler's first law talks about how the orbit of an object around another object is an ellipse, not necessarily a circle.
Kind of a flattened circle?
Yeah, depending on how flat
squished
it could be.
Okay.
For our purposes, we'll just say they're mostly circular.
Okay.
The second law is most important for us, though, and that is the closer an object is to the thing it's orbiting, the faster it goes. So in the solar system, the planet Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It orbits the sun in 88 days. It moves at 100,000 kilometers an hour.
It's a lot different
just
than Earth.
moving.
Okay.
Right. And further out from the Earth is Jupiter, and it moves at only 1/4 the speed of Mercury, and it has to go further, so it takes 12 of our years for Jupiter to make one lap. The further out you are, the slower you go.
Okay.
So we're talking about planets. Why? What does it have to do with weather satellites? Turns out Kepler's laws apply to planets orbiting the sun. They also apply to satellites orbiting the Earth.
Okay.
You know, our natural satellite is the moon. There's the famous Apollo 8 Earthrise shot.
Beautiful shot.
Oh, yeah, you could just talk about that forever. December 1968, the moon is about 250,000 miles away from the Earth.
Okay.
Takes a month to go around the Earth. It's that far out, it takes a full month to do an orbit. Another shot here of the International Space Station, instead of being 250,000 miles out, the ISS is only 250 miles up. It's really close. And so it doesn't take a full month for the space station to go around the Earth. It only takes 90 minutes. It's so close, it just whips right around 90 minutes.
Okay.
So weather satellites, there are a number of weather satellites, and there are a number of orbits. The further out you have the satellite, the longer it takes to go around the Earth. And this is important because different satellites have different purposes. So we have a satellite here. This little salt shaker lid will serve as our satellite going around the Earth. Let's say you have a satellite that's 22,000 miles above the Earth. This is kind of a magical spot because at that distance, it takes a full day for the satellite to go around the Earth. Imagine if you put your satellite 22,000 miles up from the equator and had it go with the Earth as the Earth spun.
The same speed.
Right.
Okay.
The satellite goes around the Earth just as fast as the Earth itself is turning. In effect, the satellite will hover in one spot.
Oh, I see.
And it appears when you make a movie loop of picture after picture after picture, you can replay that and you get these movie loops. Geostationary satellites, these are called, because they're stationary in appearance, and they provide a constant frame of reference. We've got an example here. Another nice thing about these satellites, since they're that far out at 22,000 miles, you can see from pole to pole, which is nice. So they're pretty broad view and a constant frame of reference.
So those are the pictures. If you're watching a weather satellite loop on TV, your favorite weather show, that's the picture that you're going to see is one that's sitting over the same spot.
If you're seeing a movie loop play again and again, that came from geostationary satellites. That's the only way you can do that.
Yeah.
The bummer, though, for us in Alaska is we're up on the very top of the planet. And for geostationary satellites to work, they have to be over the equator. So for the geostationary bird to view Alaska, it's kind of like reading a book, but you're reading it edge on like that.
Right.
So there's another kind of orbit called the polar orbit, which is nice. We're near the pole.
Yeah.
And here's a satellite. Those polar orbiters are much closer to the Earth, getting down toward International Space Station elevation. And they're not in the equatorial plane. Rather, their orbital plane is inclined like this. And the Earth turns under that satellite as the satellite orbits. The nice thing about that is for Alaska, the satellite will go right over Alaska a few times a day. And so you get a much closer image. We've got a shot from the Sumi NPP satellite. Specifically, it's a true color image from the VIIRS sensor. That's an acronym there.
Okay.
But it's a beautiful shot of Alaska, and you can see so much detail. The kind of detail, because you're close in,
Very high resolution.
you couldn't get this kind of view from geostationary satellites. The advantage of these polar orbiters is nice close imagery. You can see a lot of detail. The disadvantage, though, is that the satellite flies by,
Right.
and then you have to wait a while to get the next image. And if geostationary weaknesses are that you're reading the page like that, the polar orbiter, you're reading the page straight on, but it's so close, and then it zips by, and you have to wait for the satellite to come around the Earth again. So there's no one perfect solution. Different satellites for different orbits. Each has their strength, and amazingly, it all comes back to Johannes Kepler and his laws of planetary motion. The same laws that govern how the planets orbit the sun, they govern how the satellites orbit the Earth, and even our little pretend salt shaker right here.
Right, okay. Well, since the 1957 Sputnik, we've been putting man-made objects into orbit around the Earth and starting to get pictures back. Who knows what will happen in the next 50 to 100 years. Amazing
it's
stuff.
a growing science, and the future is bright.
Thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. And for more information on GINA and what the satellite systems do there and what Eric's been talking about today, you can go to the web address on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder.
Here, some areas of the coast coming up to 25 knots and then dropping back later this evening. Other areas will be due to rough seas. Over the inside waters for tomorrow, coming down to 10 to 20 knots here. This actually could increase to 25 knots in the afternoon for northern Lynn Canal. And then for tonight, there's a Clarence Strait, small craft advisories for 25 knot winds, but those will all be coming down again tomorrow. Then for Tuesday, mostly southwest on the light side there, a gentle breeze there for the southern coast, south 15 for the north, and south 20 knots, 4-foot seas for our Lynn Canal, the entire stretch of the canal there. Becoming north, light northerlies there over the southern inner channels, Clarence Strait, variable to west-southwest at about 10 in the central areas. Prince William Sound tomorrow, basically southeast, but pretty light on the wind speed, so really the directions could be quite variable. Southeast 15 to start with here for Cook Inlet, but becoming light and variable in the afternoon. South in the mid-Cook Inlet area, and then winds tending to become westerly as the trough axis finally pulls off to the east here, but light, and then southwest to southerlies for the coast, 15 to maybe 20 knots. And then on Tuesday, really laying down variable to southwest for the North Gulf Coast, including Prince William Sound, light variable winds over northern Cook Inlet. Southerlies at about 10 there through the Forelands and on down into the southern inlet there. Very light winds, call it southwest at 5 for Kamishak Bay. Southwest 15 though for Chillicothe Strait with 5-foot seas. Otherwise southerlies here along the east side of Kodiak Island and up into the Barrens. Out to the west for Bristol Bay, west winds 15 tomorrow, but small craft advisories here for the Alaska Peninsula, west-northwest or west-southwest here on the Pacific side, about 25 knots with 11-foot seas, taking a turn to the west at about 20 knots there southwest of Kodiak Island. And then for Tuesday, light variable winds, so under a weak surface ridge of high pressure coming in over the area, so even pretty light there in the Pacific side as well. But still looking at 15-knot westerlies for Bristol Bay, so not much change from Monday there, and west 15 southwest of Kodiak Island. Out in the Aleutians, again, easterlies at about 20 knots or so, stronger just to the south, and then southeast 20 for the west central Aleutians. Adak and Atka southwest 20 knots, taking a turn to the east there at about 20 knots, and then becoming northwesterly at 25 knots for the Fox Islands. Excuse me. And then for Tuesday, light winds here south-southeast, becoming southwest at about 15 to 20 knots out toward the central Aleutians, and kind of variable 15-knot winds out for those western zones. And for the southwest coast, looks like northwesterlies 15 to 20 knots with the strongest winds north of Nunivak Island. Pribilofs west at 15, and for St. Matthew Island, southwest 20 knots, becoming westerly at 20 or so there for St. Lawrence Island. And Tuesday's outlook, pretty light winds now for the Pueblos, mostly from a southerly direction, and light westerlies here into Kuskokwim Bay. Southwest 15, picking up to about 20 knots there across the northern Bering, and then south at about 15 for the St. Lawrence Island zone. Up along the Arctic coast, tomorrow easterlies 15 to 20 knots here from Demarcation Point all the way over to, say, Cape Thompson. And then from Wales to Cape Thompson, mostly westerly at about 10 knots. Pretty slight seas through here, but 5 feet possible there on the east side. And then about the same wind speed. We'll go for 3-foot seas here for the eastern Arctic coast, and east to southeast 15 here as you get over toward the central coast. But really light winds, just 10 knots from the east turning north, and then northwesterlies, which will probably turn westerly in across Kotzebue Sound, but staying all on the light side, 5 to 10 knots. For tonight, rain continues and increases over the southeast coast as that front approaches, and again, locally picking the winds up, areas of small craft advisories there along the coast, and as I mentioned for Clarence Strait, and then good showers, isolated thunderstorms, lots of clouds moving northward. That front not moving all that fast, just drifting northward, and then scattered thunderstorms possible with showers along that trough axis there. Another front developing right in this area, so more rain spreading into the western and southern portions of Kodiak Island, and that should begin to taper off again tomorrow and tomorrow afternoon. Lingering moisture back up here over Bristol Bay with showers over the southwest interior, scattered showers and thunderstorms up into the east side, staying nice back to the north and northwest, and rain changing to showers and those tapering off tomorrow afternoon for the Panhandle, and Monday less rain.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.